Assalamu alaikum guys. Recently I was having a chat with my wife and she asked me if I was a footballer, how would I go about investing my money? And I thought it's a good question. So just for fun in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to step into Salah, Mo Salah's shoes and invest his money for him. And Mo Salah, alhamdulillah, he's very rich. He has a net worth of $90 million and he gets about $35 million every year. And that's a fairly chunky amount of money. So in this video, what I'm going to do is systematically go through and explain how I would go about deploying his assets if I was in his shoes. I will factor into mind a few things. Firstly, he's Muslim, so I'll make sure that it's all Sharia compliant. The second thing I'll look at is that he's Egyptian and he's historically been someone who's quite charitable, wants to have a bit of impact with his wealth as well. And then finally, he's an attacking player, right? This is Muhammad Salah we're talking about. So I'm going to be a bit more aggressive with my portfolio than I would be if I was, for example, I don't know, investing for Edwin van der Sar or someone, right? So it's going to be fairly aggressive as a portfolio. And then what I'll do is I'll actually project forward over 10 years and 20 years and show where we'll end up with Mo Salah's portfolio if we run it the way that I've set out. But first, if you're new to this channel, welcome. Islamic Finance Guru, or IFG for short, is a halal investment and personal finance platform and marketplace. We compare, analyze, review lots of financial products and investments across the Islamic finance industry. Our mission is to help Muslims everywhere in the world get wealthier and make their money work for them. If that sounds like it's up your street, then please do like this video, please subscribe to the channel and follow us on our journey, and please do share this video with your friends and family as well. And if you'd like to talk to me or any of the thousands of like-minded others in our community, then please do check out our Telegram groups. They are in the links below. There are lots of really good conversations going on and very knowledgeable people in there, so join us there. So first, let's just set up how the portfolio looks. So Muhammad Salah has 90 million in assets right now, and he's adding $35 million every year. So let's project forward for the next 5 years. He's 28 years. He's going to be at the peak of his career for the next 5 years. And let's project forward, 35 million every year. So in total, after 5 years, he's going to end up with roughly 265 million or so dollars that he has to actually invest. Now we are going to just, let's say, round this to $250 million just to make it simple. How would you invest that money? The first thing I would do is put about 25%, $62.5 million, into something fairly safe like property, and just make that the kind of fixed return that he makes and that he kind of lives off for the rest of his life. The next thing that I would go for is 25% into stocks and shares. So that's $62.5 million into stocks and shares. Then I would have 50% left. Now with most people, I would put, in alternative assets, more aggressive assets, I would typically advise going for anywhere between 10 and up to maybe 25, maximum 30%, right? If you're really aggressive. But with Muhammad Salah, because he's got just such a massive amount of wealth, he's going to be very rich, even if he just has 10% of his portfolio, quite frankly. So you can take a bit more risks and really try and grow this so that, instead of $250 million, you actually end up being a billionaire, which is possible if you make some good decisions with your wealth right now. The other thing that makes me keen to put a bit more of an aggressive tilt onto Muhammad Salah's portfolio is because he is a striker, right? He is aggressive by nature. So I would expect someone like him, who's quite young as well, to be a bit more punchy with his attitude towards investing. Now that we have clear in our head what we're going to be doing with this portfolio, let's actually dive into each of these sections and work out how we're going to be spending those chunky amounts of money specifically. So I've allocated 25% or $62.5 million of Mo's money to real estate. And this is the safe element of his portfolio that just gives him a steady return, which he will use all of to basically just live off. And I will diversify this 62.5 million in 3 key ways. The first thing I would do is I would buy a whole range of different kinds of properties. So, care homes, dentists, rental properties, large student lets, commercial property, property in downtown London, and all sorts of other kinds of property. So you kind of vary the different kinds of property classes that you're investing in. The other thing I would do is I would diversify by geography. So I'd invest in the UK, I'd invest a lot in Egypt, places like Iskandariya, Sharm el-Sheikh, Hurghada, Cairo. These are places where, buying quality large blocks of flats, for example, could do quite well, or holiday lets, or even hotels could do potentially quite well. So I would explore these themes. Tokyo apparently has some really good yielding properties right now, so I would explore that. Perhaps Turkey, UAE, a few key capitals around the world where it's easy to get to, it's quite safe, and it's quite knowledge, you understand that market. Those are the kind of places that I would put Mo's money when it comes to geographic displacement. And then finally, I would make sure that I'm diversifying along the property cycle as well. So you have pre-planning investments, right? So you buy a plot of land and you make a bit of a gamble that you think that you're going to get planning on it, and that shoots up in price. So that's pre-planning. Then you have planning and making it now sold to a construction company, and you've got that planning permission sorted, and you actually start building. Then you've got the kind of later stage construction properties, and you're buying off plan. Then you have post-production, it's done. You're actually just buying a property at that point and hoping that it increases or it yields a nice return. So I will be making sure that Mo invests across all of these. And the way I would think about the 60 million or so is like, of course, you're trying to diversify across these three themes. You want to invest roughly, $3 to $10 million in each property deal that you do, and you want to have somewhere between 15 and maybe 20 deals that you do in property, which means that it is large enough to be diversified, but also fairly concentrated, so that it allows you to actually manage those properties. Because otherwise, if you're managing hundreds of properties, it gets quite unwieldy at times. So I would probably invest in quite some concentrated deals. So one deal could well just be one block of flats, but from your perspective it looks like one deal, right? And that means that it's easy for you to manage, and make sure that you're investing with institutional investors and other high net worths, so that the quality of the deal is pretty solid. The other thing here is I've not used any debt for Mo here. Typically you could leverage up to 10-20% without any problems and just magnify your returns a bit, but actually I'm being super safe here, because I know that I've got 50% in quite aggressive assets coming down the line. And if 60 million of this is yielding, let's say about 8%, so about $4.8 million a year, that's about $400,000 per month that Mo has to spend, which is a pretty sizable chunk of money to spend. I think you struggle to spend that, quite frankly, in a year. But I'm giving that money to Mo because he can enjoy himself a bit, and I know he's not going to struggle for his day-to-day with these kind of monies coming in. So with stocks and shares, $62.5 million, again, I would look to allocate that across some pretty safe, large cap, managed funds. The way I would manage this is I would go to the tier one asset managers globally, and I would say to them, look, I want to give you $10 million to manage. Give me a pitch on how you're going to do that. And I would go to 30 of them, and I would shortlist that down to about 6 different fund managers, and then I would give each of them $10 million each. And the idea would be that these are top quality fund managers, and they would manage my money well. And I know that a lot of people say that you could just invest it in passive index funds and that's actually good enough. But if you have that kind of money, you can actually access people who can beat the markets. So why not beat the markets? There are people out there who are good enough to do that, and with that money you'll find them. So 6 different funds, different managers, so it's it's uncorrelated as much as you can, and it's spreading the risk. And then I would go into European equities, I would go into US equities, I'd go into emerging markets, I'd go into yielding instruments, I'd go into healthcare, I'd go into tech, different kinds of flavors across that 6 different buckets of investment that you're making. And then I just let that run for many years and kind of forget about it. So now we get to the interesting bit, right? Alternative assets. So we've still got 50% of Mo's portfolio to play with. What are we going to do with this? So what I would do with 25% of it, $62.5 million, is put that into venture capital. I would put that into early stage emerging startups, and the thinking there is that this gives him a huge kick. It gives him that potential to have a really big outcome as a result of this. The way I would do it is I would invest that $60 million, and 60% of it I would set aside, about 40 million or so, I would set aside to invest early stage, seed stage companies, maybe about 30 to 50 of them. And then the other 20 million that is left over from this allocation, I would invest in the winners that come out of these 30 to 50 companies and just back them all the way through until they get to IPO stage. So that's how I would deploy that. And if you're looking for a good VC manager, then there's a hint below, but you can of course look online and find some others as well. Then you've got the rest of the portfolio. There's 25% left. What I would do is I would put 20% of that, so about $50 million, into SME financing, Sharia compliant SME financing. And the thinking here is that you can churn this money and get somewhere between 12 and 15% returns per annum very, very regularly. And the money that you're giving will be going to small businesses and helping them grow and become the next Euro garages or the next Asda. It becomes the next large brick and mortars business. And there's a lot of potential there. And unfortunately, there isn't that many Sharia compliant lending options available for small businesses. So this can have a tremendous amount of impact. And the same goes, by the way, for the startup side of things. There's a tremendous amount of impact that can be had here. You're investing in the cure for cancer, and you're investing in how the future of the internet looks, and all of these kind of things that are going to add real value to the world, how to solve climate change. And then with the final 5%, let's just put it into cryptocurrency, because that's the new gold, right? So put it into a basket of 20 or so cryptocurrencies, and then forget about it. It's a nice hedge against the rest of the portfolio. So over a decade, let's see how I think this would pan out. So I think with property, we're actually going to do, we're going to increase at about 30% per annum, and let's see where we get to. I mean, the key thing here is that it's yielding a nice return. With stocks and shares, I'm projecting a 10% annualized return, and we can grow that from 62.5 to maybe 162 million in the first decade and 420 million in the next decade. With startups, I'm aiming for an industry leading 4x return. And by the way, the top funds can get up to 10x. So this could, be way off. But let's say a 4x return, you go from 62.5 to 250 million in the first 10 years. And then in the next 10 years, you go to $1 billion. And then with SME financing, I'm aiming for a compounded return of 12 to 14%. So that gives me 170 million in the first 10 years. And then it gives me 576 million in the second 10 years. And then crypto, I've got no idea. So I've just kind of projected a 5x return over the first 10 years. So that gives me 62.5 million. And then a 5x return again in the second 10 years. So that gives me 312.5 million. So in total, I made profits of about 3x, so 475 million. So Mo's net worth is now 725 million. And then in the second decade, I've made him now a billionaire. So he's now $2.4 billion rich, and he's made a 10x return on his investments. Sounds pretty good, to be honest. So there you have it, folks. That's my take on how I would invest Mo's net worth. It was just a bit of fun. Of course, a lot of assumptions were made about Mo's assets and his tastes and all that sort of thing. And I took a bit of liberty on, I didn't necessarily work out precisely what his salary increase is going to be and how that's going to pan out over the next few years and all of that sort of taxes. I didn't think about that. This is just really ballpark figures. But I think it's an interesting exercise on how a high net worth individual can potentially do a lot of really good stuff with his wealth, and how that can actually really help accelerate his wealth over time as well if he's clever. If he's not clever, however, you've got really bad examples historically, like Mike Tyson. When he was in his early days, he lost a fortune of $200 million because it wasn't well managed. But then on the other hand, you've got people like David Beckham and Wayne Rooney and Cristiano Ronaldo, whose wealth is really well managed and actually makes them a lot more money as a result of that. So that their football income is one thing, but actually a lot of their wider income is where they get a lot more of their money. If you've watched this far, then please do let me know in the comments below which Muslim celebrity should I do next for these videos where I invest their net worth. I'm really keen to do Paul Pogba, but maybe you disagree and you want me to do someone else. Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.